I don't need more time to speak.
No. Keep it brief. Minutes of the last meeting. Any questions on matters of accuracy first, please? The minutes of the last meeting? No? Good. I think that the actions from the last meeting, copy of a letter sent to the chairman of nothing. Did you get that, David?
Sorry.
Those actions in the minutes, so the actions...
Oh, from the previous meeting.
So that it is in information items, the actions to be noted for this agenda.
You got me that. Yes, thank you. Okay, so can I have a proposal that those are accurate and we can sign them off? Thank you, David.
I wasn't there.
And Luke seconded it. Everyone in favour? Yes, thank you very much. Moving on.
I'll put those down, we can do the same.
Yes, sign those afterwards. Here he is. You're in the naughty seat, Howard.
Well, here.
No, next to Ken.
Hello.
Have we had any questions?
No.
None in advance, good. There's no members of the public here. Okay, so item number 7, proposals for a full asset review. Are you going to lead on this, Jane?
I am, Chairman, thank you. Just to say that this report is from Matt Ryan, who'll be leading on this stream of work. Unfortunately, Matt's unable to be with us tonight, so he's asked me to handle this. The main thrust of this report is that as a council, we need to ensure that we have the right processes in place to make informed decisions to meet our operational and strategic priorities. And this process, and this report is very much about kicking off the process for a full asset review, not the full asset review itself. So the process is going to support clear, transparent decision-making process, and obviously any decisions on the actual policy, on the actual assets will of course come back to the most appropriate committee, but probably full council for assets.
Thank you very much.
So I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions that members might have, and Matt is available on the phone if we have anything too tricky.
Anybody like to ask? David?
Yeah, I spoke to Matt the other week about this coming up, and I was talking about my desire that we register our local green spaces. Those local green spaces would include those which the council owns. That process has some additional criteria, which is whether it's of value to the community. And I note in the impact assessment there isn't a specific value to the community. And I would expect the reason we hold, I'd like to think the reasons we hold these assets is because they are of value to the community. So I'd just like to work with Matt to make sure that we cover those sort of criteria when he's setting out his process. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't see there being any problem with that at all, Councillor.
It's being suggested that we should nominate 4 members to progress the plan as set out in the report. My suggestion is that we use the budget working group for this, and there's another aspect later on that we might want to do that. Are people happy with that?
Yeah.
They've got some familiarity with other aspects of the thing. We need to meet anyway as a budget working group, or have IT meetings set up.
I'm not entirely sure about that.
Go on, Peter. Yeah.
Because asset management is a fairly distinct activity. There's an awful lot of stuff in asset management that isn't actually finance related, because it's not all about money.
Yeah.
And an awful lot of it is sort of, I did an awful lot of this at work with the British with the Institute of Asset Management.
So you'd like to do it?
Right, no, I'm not saying about it. What I'm saying is there's a lot more to it than a purely financial aspect.
Yeah, I agree. And what we used to have, though, with the budget working group was that people came along who wanted to come along anyway. So.
And the other question would be, has Matt looked at any of the Institute of Asset Management processes?
I can answer that because I worked on this paper with Matt. So he has.
So he's aware of it.
And also best practice from other councils. So this is a sort of standard format. I had one query which Matt cleared up, which was to do with finance. The cost of starting this process, if we bring a specialist in, is likely to be 30 to 40,000, I would think. Once they've reviewed, once we have a process in place, to review the assets. So he's assured me that that's in the budget for next year. So picking up the point of non-financial assets, I think probably there will be two sides to this. Assets that we do need to value, and we need options on those as to whether we sell them, we keep them, and then assets that we absolutely would never sell, but don't have any financial value. So I think there'll be chapters to this policy. I'm really happy with it. I think it's just the start of the process. Interesting, it will change as we go through. We need to get on with it.
One final point is also that the assets that we keep need to be managed in a legally compliant and effective manner. So that's the other aspect.
It would be an opportunity for us to do what we talked about at an earlier meeting, where because we haven't got a capital programme, we need to ensure that we're putting aside reserves to manage those assets that we will have to improve, replace, or whatever.
But again, you're talking finance, it's about the process of how you go about managing those assets.
You're talking about it physically, actually.
Yes, manage.
I think.
Kevin now manages them
I think we have a bit of a blunt tool with the reserve issue, because we do have money in the reserves, dilapidation, those sorts of things, but it's not honed enough for an asset review because it was done before we had assets. So I think once we've got the assets, then we can decide who's going to manage them, how the assets are going to be managed and maintained, and then what reserve we need to book against that.
Good. Thank you. So as long as it's a flexible group, are people happy with, we can just say 4 at this stage, we can just accept the recommendation as it is.
So do members wish to nominate 4 people, or would you like to delay that to a later date when there's more?
Who's going to choose the 4?
Well, as I say, I would start with the budget, with the old budget group, but taking Pete's advice, when we're discussing the asset bit, we invite people and say, look, we're discussing assets, if you've got a specific interest, please come along. Come on.
Isn't it all assets? It's only assets, isn't it, you're talking about?
Well, later on there's another need for another group, so it's whether those two just work together.
Well, I'd just like to suggest that Peter is invited to come as one of those 4.
Yes. Aaron, happy with that?
Second.
I'd be quite interested as well.
Yeah.
Because of
And David.
Okay, good.
So can I be clear where the other 2 are coming from?
Well, who was on the
Well, why don't you make it your original
David Gray needs to be.
Why don't you make it your original suggestion you made?
Yeah.
And then, on an exceptional basis, if me or David have got anything we're particularly keen to discuss, we come along with the extras.
So it's the budget working group.
Plus Peter and Councillor Barrow and Councillor Northam, as and when required.
If you frame it as being the budget working group's responsibility, then you are considering it primarily from a financial point of view. And I've expressed some reasons why I don't think that's appropriate.
Chair, I don't know if this is working or not. I don't think it want to work. Can I suggest those 2 over there, and 2 of the 4 members of the budget working group to be decided by those 4 members themselves? Which 2 will come along?
So Councillor Barrow, Councillor Northern, plus 2 members of the budget working group.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And
Happy with that?
if you,
Would somebody like to propose that?
thank you.
That's what I had.
There we are. Howard and David Gray.
And a vote.
And a vote, everybody in favour? Lucy, happy with that? Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Chair,
Yes.
sorry I'm late to the party on this one, but I don't have to remind members about the Social Value Act 2012. I've just got it on my screen now.
Right.
And just to reassure Councillor Northern, Social Value Act 2012 requires the public sector to ensure that the money it spends on services creates the greatest economic, social and environmental value for local communities. I'd argue that although it says services, I'm guessing that embraces assets and how we spend council taxpayers' money and how council officers spend their time. So I think we can offer that reassurance. and that there'll be overlap with lots of other areas of work. Sorry for the late running of that comment.
That's right, thank you. It didn't start us having to start thinking again. That's important. Peter?
Well, just to follow up on that point, I think that's really relevant because when it gets to actual disposals of assets, it's not just about the money that we might make, it's about the alternative use of that asset might be put to, which is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and we don't need capital assets, but capital revenue, you know, what we need is what's good for the community and the revenue that brings, if any. We don't need to sell it.
Okay, good, thank you. Grant policies, item number 8. There's some small changes being recommended for the changes to the grants policy. We did, at the pre-meet, add another one. And got that in.
I'm afraid I haven't had chance with everything that's been going on today with adding that in, but there was an additional question that was raised regarding, in a similar way to we currently ask if the funding is for a crime and disorder item, that do they have the support of the local crime reduction officer, that an additional question is added that if the project is around support for vulnerable adults or children, is there the support from Dorset Council's adult social care or children's services?
We want to make sure that it links into, and it's not being done separately from.
That there's no duplication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that addition, any other points about Luke?
I'm just wondering why we're raising the limits. To me, we've got a 50k pot, which means there's 25 small organisations we can help. And I don't believe we should be principally funding anything too big, because that's not our role. So I'm just interested to know why we're actually trying to up the limit, because that will enable us to benefit the fewer organisations.
David, before you answer, I think you were going to...
I'd like to support that comment, and I'd like to know why. And I've got one other point which is not relevant to this, but I'll make it in a minute.
Okay.
So a number of members had requested to me on email before the meeting that it was raised, so I agreed to put it in. It's totally within your gift as the deciding committee what limit, if any, you wish to put on it. So there's no hard and fast feeling from officers on this. More than willing to alter that if you should want to.
Did they offer a reason?
Just that it was underspent. I think we've had quite a few late applications in that maybe we weren't anticipating. It was looking like we were going to be further underspent than we are. But if you wish a personal officer view on this, I happen to think that keeping it at £2,000 is quite a good idea.
And it does encourage maybe the more marginal offences rather than, I know £1,000 not that much, but
So my second point, if we
Well, before you go into that, can I put a proposal that we do keep it at £2,000, because I totally agree with the points that you
I'm happy
made.
to propose £2,000.
Good.
You could help.
I'll second
second
it.
it.
Right.
And a vote.
And the vote on that?
So we're keeping it at £2,000.
Unanimous.
Good. Now you'd like to make the second point.
Yeah, it was shamefully, it was the first time I'd actually read the full policy. Sorry about that. The one thing that, maybe it's just my need for finisher completer exercise, but it talks about the, they have to fill out a return post the money, and I think they get up to 6 months, I think that's right. Now that we're into a full year, I'd like to see us having some sort of we've received it type of, so that if they come again next year and we've not received the previous year.
If anybody tried for another bite at that cherry, it would
sorry.
be noted to members.
Yeah, that sounds a little over controlling, but I just want to see.
No, I think from a prudent financial management point of view,
Yeah.
that's absolutely fine.
Don't we need to vote on that?
And you just happy to accept?
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good?
David, can I just make one point?
Yes.
It's what's having a conversation with our tenant at the Wellbeing Centre today, the problems that she's experiencing. I think that's likely to be true of very many town halls and other charity organisations. In a year's time, I think we can see quite a lot of charities in distress. So I think keeping it at £2,000 is probably wise. spread out, and I think we're likely to get quite a lot of requests for help, because it's going to be really, really tough.
I've also recommended groups look at the Dorset scheme, the Dorset Council scheme, which I think has a higher figure of £3,000. Maybe, I think it's 3 and then a big project getting even bigger than that, but require more detail.
I think we mustn't forget, though, that we are always able to add money if so we wish. So not having it at 3,000 straight away, which would put a lot of people bidding up to that figure, if they've really got a case, they can put their case to us, and we can make that decision.
Some of it might be that style.
Okay, good. So we've got some recommendations for awarding grants. The first one,
Did you take a vote on the policy as is?
I think yes, we all agreed that we were happy with that position.
We voted on the specific of the 2,000,
Yeah.
but not only policy overall. Do you need a vote on the policy overall?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Just
Sorry,
Lucy?
can I ask for that repeat of the points that Jane, you made at the beginning? I think there's a couple of points about social care on Dorset Council or something.
Yes, it was the suggestion that we have added.
That's already been voted on.
No.
Yes.
We
Only
voted on the
voted on the
sum.
money.
Oh, on the money, my apologies.
Yeah.
So, David, did you want to consider?
Yes, it was that we add that where a bid is for adding money towards putting money towards working with vulnerable young people or adults, we want a reassurance that they're working in tune with Dorset Council's teams working in adult and areas.
Okay. What will be the proof of that?
Well, they would need to be able to say who they've talked to, or we would have something. James will work on the exact wording to enable them to actually indicate in the application. We've got an application in front of us working with 6 vulnerable families. I would want to know that they are working with the family partnership zone to make sure that they've not found 5 families, 6 families totally separately from the Dorset Council's needs in that area.
Okay, because obviously in the policy already we've got something about organisations whose function is primarily undertaken by the Health Authority or Dorset Council Social Services. So is this complementing this?
We hope it would be complementing it rather than replacing or doing something that is totally alien to what those policies are.
We're unable as a council to fund directly those services, but we can fund charities or local groups who work in a similar area. So before you tonight you have an application from Home Start, which whilst it works with vulnerable families, it isn't duplicating or carrying out the statutory role of Dorset Council.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm just aware that Dorset Council works in partnership with so many organisations that I think we're adding a new level of complexity.
See, we're not saying that you have to be working with them, or that you have to be under their wing, or you have to be covered by them. We're just saying, have you made those links in with Dorset Council? Are they aware of you? Is my understanding.
Yeah.
It's not saying that we will only fund organisations who are under the wing of Dorset Council.
Good. Okay, so on that basis, can we have a proposal that we accept the whole set of proposed changes? David Gray's proposed. David Morgan has seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first application that we have is my set of papers.
Home Start.
Home Start.
West Dorset.
Yes, it's interesting that it's West Dorset Home Start, but it's actually saying it's based in Weymouth. Any questions about that? because this is the one where I want, you know, Dorset Council to know that these families are being worked with, and that's it. That's all they need to do, but so that they know that there is that support going in. We all happy with?
Yeah, we're going to vote on each one individually. Do we have to vote on each one individually?
You can vote on them on block if you wish, unless they're already specific.
There's some with some very big sums of money, so I don't think we will want to vote for them en bloc.
No, that would be my point, because
Yeah.
I haven't got any objections to the first four.
No.
I have on one of them.
So can we
You
take
could vote on those, if everybody was in agreement, you could vote on the first four, in the interest of brevity.
I'm happy to say first four block.
Yeah, me too.
everyone happy with the first four?
So that's Home Start, New Waves, Read Easy, Weymouth Portland, and Western Community Group.
Could I ask a policy question? I note that one of the later ones is a second application.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think that will probably be subject to
Okay.
a separate discussion from
So
the first four.
this Western group isn't the same as the previous Western group? I seem to remember there was something for Western previously.
It'll be on the sheet is
It's not called Western. Anyway, if I'm happy to vote on the first four.
Can I?
I can't see that we've allocated to Western before.
No, we haven't.
That's fine then, yeah.
Harry?
No, not according to the sheet.
Thank you. I'm still trying to get this to work, but
My apologies, it may be that there's something wrong with the battery.
it's probably wrong with me. But
I wouldn't have thought
Not
so.
to worry.
Councillor
Maybe
Lane.
too late.
But the fourth one down here, for example, and I think there are others like this as well, when they applied for this, presumably it was before we had the situation we've got now nationally, internationally, and I'm wondering about if we were, and I've picked on four, but not identifying the fourth one as alone. I suspect they won't be going ahead with this, so therefore,
There may be a delay, but I think the need will remain after the current situation is resolved.
well, that's what I'm querying. I'd like to say, yes, let's go with those four, providing that the money will be spent as envisaged. Yeah, if it's going to change it, and maybe a certain discretion here to say, well, we'll accept that change and go ahead, and we don't need a committee to decide it. I'm quite happy the chairman agrees.
So the agreement that we have with organisations we give funding to is that it can only be used for the purpose for which it's given, and if they wish to change that, they have to come back and speak to us in the office. So my chosen process following that will be bring it back to you at committee, but if you're saying that you're happy for me to talk to the chairman, should it need to change, but that would depend if it materially changed. If the Western Group wanted to suddenly do...
And it's not only the Western Group, any group.
Oh, no, but using
I'm
them as an
mindful that
example.
we might not be meeting like this for a long time, actually. And I still want, if they come back and say, no, we still need it, that we're not being held up because of we're operating in a different way. So I'm quite happy to delegate the chairman to change the conditions if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, one can certainly envisage that a change might be required of the timeline.
Yeah.
And that was my point, we're going to reserve this money because it's obviously for this year's budget, we need to reserve it into next year. If we can make a specific...
I think we're in exceptional circumstances, and we will, within the office, continue to manage things as best we can with a sensitivity to where we are and where local groups are at the moment. But we wouldn't materially change one of your decisions.
No, I'd just like the minutes to say that we recognise this fluid position
It's very sensible.
or ever-changing position.
Right, so the fifth one.
So do you want to vote on those first four?
Oh yes, can we vote on the
Actually
first four?
voted.
All those in favour? Pick any name you like, Nicky. Okay, keep moving on this. Questions on the fifth one?
Got one question, well, hang on,
Yeah.
technical point. This seems to be from a community interest company.
We have, or you have funded CICs before.
Yeah, the question is, that I've understood that previously the carnival was run as a charity. The question is, why has it turned itself from a charity into a community interest company?
It was wound up, I think, wasn't it?
I think there was some issue with the previous charity, and the new organisation that wants to take the carnival forward is separate from that old charity and wanted to be seen as a new separate organisation. So as I understand it, that old charity is being wound up, but certainly the new CIC is not connected with that charity at all.
So it's a completely fresh start.
New people, new start, new ethos.
Okay, my question, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable with this one. My question is around the fact that it's a revenue grant, basically, and we've never yet this year allocated a revenue grant. I understand they're trying to get off the ground. I just don't want to set a precedent that we will be funding revenues rather than. So
The radio purchase is a capital,
Oh.
and you have funded training before. It's the insurance that is probably the newer element. We have had a conversation with the CIC to discuss that this would be a one-off, but it's not something that they can rely on the council to fund in future years, and they've said that insurance in future years will be covered for the profit from this event.
I just like the wording stronger than in the grant response to say that we will not in future years carry on funding insurance.
I can have a word with them before we make the grant, and if you're happy that I will take it forward if I am happy.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah, I'm happy with Jane's point there. My question is about the radio purchase. I take it these are handheld radios for an event. These things don't last well if you use them once a year and then keep them in a garage for 11 months. From my experience, if you use them regularly, they last well, but they're not designed to be long-term stored, and the batteries will go. So I don't know whether this is a wise purchase, in my opinion, for an events organisation that does one event a year.
Right.
I'd be more comfortable with a radio rental for one event. Or the other option I was wondering, and fortunately Kev's here, whether there was any logic in us purchasing some additional radios which could live in the beach office, which may have some use, or we could rent out at other times, rather than the CIC having to look after them.
Totally agree with you on the renting of a radio. The costs are relatively minimal for a week's hire of various frequencies, as opposed to us purchasing radios and we then sublet or rent out. The amount of different radio frequencies that they would require, and this is how the event has developed over the last 5 to 10 years. Back in the old days it was slightly different. But you'd have traffic management frequencies, security frequencies, all sorts of things. It's not something that the beach office management system requires, a complex system like that, but I totally agree with the rental situation.
I thought, from my dim and distant past, when the Lions Club, for example, when I was a member, which is about 5 years ago now, organised a beach motocross, they borrowed theirs from the council. So haven't the council got some?
Similar to what I just said, not to the Lions Club motocross, relatively single venue, not as a complex. This
okay, sorry.
current plans are, and they are very burgeoning plans. We're looking at multi-venue with road closure management companies and medical response companies. Our system would not be enough for these guys to undertake what they do.
And you'll probably need your system on the day anyway.
We need it in August. Back in the days of October motocross, a little bit different because of the strength on our system, so we've always had some separate. We've got 2 channels.
I did hear what you said, but I didn't realise it related as well.
Kevin, you might be able to help me with the question I've got. I've gathered that this year Carnival was going to be a fairly small affair, and they were building up to something much more substantial next year. So are they needing them for this year?
I would imagine the pre-planning, because obviously the planning of this, and I've literally had some correspondence this afternoon from Charlie Shepherd, who's obviously liaising with the Carnival CIC. They are still planning for the big carnival to be next year. There will no doubt be some peripheral fundraising events if current situations allow. Big caveat. But yeah, the main event is for next year. I would imagine they are trying to secure relevant monies so that they can then go forward and attract other sponsorship. If they haven't got a product to get sponsored, they need to secure some of this.
Are we generally saying that, Peter?
I was just going to make a proposal that we approve this grant, except for the radios. We go back to them, this question about the radios and see what they want to do.
Would you be happy to approve the grant amount, but that it's for rental of radios, that the amount for radio purchase goes on the rental of radios instead?
I'd rather not, because I mean, when they
Because I'm
actually
just
go in,
wondering about bringing it back to committee.
I'm also a bit surprised, because the sort of radios that have been spoken about, £1,000, how many radios does that buy?
You can buy a fair few. I mean, the radios that we use up for the beach management, we've got 2 frequencies, one for events and a separate one for day-to-day operations. Each unit's approximately £140 to buy.
Dear, aren't they?
You can rent them for pre-programmed on the frequencies. They may be talking about securing radio frequencies for the Ofcom. I don't know, but ours we can rent from almost single figures a week. You know, 9, 10, 11 pounds a week per unit.
May I propose that we knock the £1,000 off and say, please come back with an adjustment to your value for renting?
Separately, can I propose we delegate to the town clerk to take this forward and approve a grant that is not including a purchase of radios?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lucy?
How many proposals do you want on the table?
We'll come to one in a minute.
I'll come to one in a minute. I think that we want to support any kind of proposal for a carnival to the hilt. I think we definitely want to do that. So in principle, we would give to the 2,000. I think in principle, I think this is perhaps what you were suggesting, Jane. We expressed concerns about insurance, we expressed concerns about the radio, so can we go back to them and ask them to refine their costings? Maybe there's something else they want to buy, I don't know, cake doilies?
They want
Shop
£70,000, so there must be something that is fitting our criteria within that £70,000 that would suit us better
Yeah,
than wasting money on something we think they would be wasting on.
so I'd like to propose that as a committee we fully support the £2,000, but we need to work with the Carnival organisation to find out how we can better spend that money.
So you would be content for me to go back with them and...
No, sorry, I was, it's just, I'm not sure.
I think Lucy says give them £2,000, and I would second that one, and then just advise them that we think purchase of radios is probably not.
I think more than advice, I think we would say we don't expect our money to be spent on the purchase of radios. Look to your £70,000 to see what might fit the criteria.
But £2,000, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're happy with me to work with them.
Yeah, and I think we've done similar before when we had the garage application and things like that. It was like, we'd like to help, but we're not sure this is the best way. It's a dialogue. But I think in principle, £2,000 is not a question. I think it looks tiny compared with what it can do for the town. Yeah. So I'd like to propose that.
Okay. But they're not to spend it on the red arrows because of our green ones.
I will work with them to find £2,000 within their budget.
Do you need a vote on that?
All those in favour?
Sorry,
Oh.
a comment if I may.
Okay.
Although, sorry, I'm conscious that we've been more rigorous with other groups about how is the money. I'd like to be assured from Jane that there'll be a list of items against which they will be spending the money. And we're not just giving them the money to spend as they see fit.
If you're happy to delegate that to me, I will not release the money until I have a list of items that I'm content that you would be happy with and have sent that round to Finance and Governance just to check.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those-
Those in favour? Good, unanimous again. Thank you very much.
Activate performing arts.
Activate performing arts is the last one.
It's the penultimate.
Panel.
Or next, is it? Any questions on that one?
It's just a proviso that it goes ahead.
If members are minded to fund an event that doesn't go ahead, the funds are then required to be returned to the council and can be reallocated.
You imagine the party that we're going to have if we're locked down for 6 months. They'll be there.
Imagine the party you won't have if we're locked down for 12.
Well, it'll be 12 plus 1 then, won't it? Labour and all.
Wow, I'll propose this one.
I'll second it.
Okay.
It's good time of the year.
All those, all those in favour? That's another unanimous one? Oh, we are feeling generous today. And the last one.
Don't minute that cough.
Only if it persists on moving.
The second, this is our second application from the Friends of MB Freedom.
For something different, so it does go against the policy, and my recommendation to you is to ask them to bring it back or agree that we bring it back to you at committee in April for the new grant fund.
I'd be much happier with that because again, it's President Cherry shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
So as a matter of policy application, would you please write to them and say, no, this application is refused because it's the second one in the same year. Give them a real clear reason. However, we will reconsider next year.
Of course.
Anyone happy with that approach? All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next year, being 2 weeks time.
Yeah, no committee meeting. Okay, so the mayoral celebration event won't be happening. So do we need to discuss it?
Well, it won't be happening in May. Well, surely it might happen at a subsequent date.
Not the way it's been envisaged. The purpose for which it has been envisaged, which is basically the handing over, the starting of a new mayoral year. Lou?
Charlie Shepherd asked me to present this. In here it does say somewhere that this would be a perpetual thing. So I can't find the right part of the text, but
Yeah, it's not a single year, it's an ongoing
it's a multi-year policy.
of the
Um,
council.
Now, I personally feel uncomfortable with the price in here, not knowing what the nature of the event is. We had envisaged, being the May Bank holiday, there are lots of events in town you could probably tack onto the side of, rather than organising a standalone event, which would hopefully be significantly cheaper, although most of it, well, it won't happen this year now. I suggest we defer this to a future meeting when we have a bit more information, because there's no need to rush on the decision on it this year.
I would just like to be clear on the further information you require.
Yes, I think that we could agree the principles of this. They're not asking for any money because it's part of the civic budget already allocated. So as long as they keep it within whatever we allocate for civic purposes, then they're actually, going along okay. So it's whether we agree the policy, the idea of having a celebration of a new mayor shortly after the annual general meeting for members of the public to see later on in May if possible.
I'd be happy with the celebration event going forward. I think we should use it as a tester though, and therefore delete the words on an annual basis. I think we should just approve it for the first time.
Except that it probably won't happen this year.
It might not happen this year, so it'll be the first time next year. That's why I said the first time and not this year. We don't know whether it's going to be successful.
Chair, can I say I actually don't agree with that, because I think potentially it should be annual. Can we put it on a trial annual basis? In other words, we're going to review it.
That would
Yep.
be the easiest way of amending it slightly. That
Very
people happy with that amendment?
Obviously, I don't know what trial this is already.
Not excited anyway, I do.
You all know my views on mayoral, so I'll be abstaining.
Right, we'll have the town crier.
Not voting against.
The bell.
I'm not going to vote against it.
Don't worry about
I don't
having
agree with
cancelled, but I anticipate that being rescheduled.
Okay.
It's going to be a
Seems
busy
a
autumn.
waste of money, we could spend £2,000 on something better. It's just not.
Yes. Lucy.
I think we've just spent 10 minutes offering sums of money for good causes, and I mean, what's happening at the moment, I mean, it's just extraordinary, isn't it? I'd like to think we could make a mark with this occasion, because we will have a new civic year. I wonder if we should look at supporting something in the town with this money in recognition of the fact that we won't come together in public, highly likely as far as we can tell at the moment, but there's going to be so much need out there, and I don't know how we choose, but we've got to find some good we can do with this.
Right. Could I suggest make a proposal that if the ceremony doesn't go ahead as planned, and therefore the £2,500 is not being spent on this, that it goes into the Mayor's charity fund, and that therefore it is used for some good purpose that we as a town council are supporting through the Mayor?
Next.
No. I'd like to propose that we give it to a food bank or something, because we're going to need it, and I think Lucy's proposal is a really great one, but there's going to be people that need stuff, and spending, even with those within the budget, I just really object to spending £2,500 on some robes and at the ceremony that we don't need.
Please, Joe.
Just from a point of process with regards to the budget, the amount is already sitting on a code for civic and mayor's
I accept that.
budget. So to use it for a different purpose would require this committee to agree environment of that budget.
But it could be in recognition of the fact that it's cancelled, we are making a donation to whatever process we come up with, so I think it's a really great idea. And that would say more to the people of Weymouth than, having a ceremony.
And it may be wise to wait till a little bit further down the line to pick that organisation or
Yeah.
organisations
Yeah, I agree with that.
until we see where the need lies within the communities.
Just
Peter.
as a comment on that, we're all going to end up in isolation to some extent or another, and there are going to be some individuals in this town who haven't got anywhere to go to be isolated. And I think this is going to hit them more than any of the rest of us. So is there something we could do to directly would help the homeless side of things, use the money aimed at that community to try and help them cope with what's going to happen? Go on.
Yeah, I agree with Peter. I've seen there's a new Facebook page for a Portland community support group to help people who are in isolation.
Weymouth and Portland.
It is now Weymouth and Portland. Okay.
It always was.
Okay.
I have to declare an interest in that it's my niece that's run.
Okay. That sounds like a very good thing. And I'm also aware of the churches running a similar process. I'm not quite sure if it's the same process, but yes, I think we should be advertising those as well, because people will look to us for some help. So we should at least point them to that, and we should bear in mind this money for that same purpose.
I think we've got to be careful now to sort of distinguish between a principle for the future, which I know will meet with some opposition, but we need to vote on that as a principle. Then there's the principle of, if we don't spend the money this year, that this committee would want to allocate that funding for a purpose that we agree as a town council. So there's the two elements that we've been discussing. Now there may be a third element, which isn't for tonight's agenda, which is, in the light of what's happening, we may want to look at our policy as a whole on how we help our community. But I think that's a separate issue from what we've got in front of us at this point in time. So can I suggest we have the two votes on this one, the first of the matter of principle that the mayoral celebration is taken from inside to outside as proposed by this paper and comes from the civic budget as it stands. Can we vote on that as a recommendation? On a trial basis? All those in
For a
favour?
period of 1 year.
No, on trial annual basis. Which is what the wording is there.
Okay.
We
Oh,
try,
okay.
we try it and review it, but with the expecting to carry on.
Yes. Happy with that?
All right, so that's the proposal.
So it's the recommendation as we see it on the screen, except having the word trial in front of it.
Yes. Yes.
You have.
The word trial. Okay. All those in favour, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All those against?
None.
All those abstaining?
2.
Good. Thank you very much. And now we are voting on the idea that if, because of the circumstances, this event does not take place this year, that this committee authorises itself.
I just wanted to throw something.
Thing into the mix.
Yes.
It's a good thing.
Good.
If you are thinking along this lines of allocation for the help of the community in the current circumstance, I'd just like to remind you that you do have an underspend in your grants pots, just over £7,000.
That was going to be my point, that, well, it's, if you take out the £2,000 for the adapted boat, which we haven't agreed,
Yeah, so
So
you're
it's
still
10.
looking at a total of £42,958.28. So just over £7,000.
Jane didn't recommend the
2,000
2,000
is
anyway.
included.
right, okay.
2,000
That
not
was my
listed.
point. I think we should add that. I think we should make my proposal would be that the £7,000 specifically is earmarked for the current emergency, and we can allocate it on whenever we have the next meeting, because we're not likely before the end of the financial year to allocate any more funds to this pot.
No, definitely not.
So can we get a reserve in for Lucy's point around somebody's going to need some help in the next few weeks, whether it be the homeless or food banks or whatever. Get this money allocated so somebody, whatever committee or process we use, can allocate it.
Peter?
I'd just like to second that.
If you would like to agree that it's agreed on email by the members of Finance and Governance,
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to facilitate that.
We do need some intelligence, don't we, around
Yeah.
what we could do with it.
And we're not getting that at the moment, but I'm sure it will come.
And we also need to know what other help is coming in, mainly from central government, but maybe Dorset Council and other charities, so that we don't either duplicate or we don't enhance one group and ignore another. So it's quite complicated actually to get all the data we require to make sure that whatever we do goes to the most valued places.
I'm going to challenge that, Howard, and say, look, whatever it is that we're going to do, we're not going to have every box ticked. We're going to have to make some decisions about if that person needs something. Let's not have a down road banner. Let's just give them the money. It might be that somewhere down the line they get something else, but we can't waste time voting on every single bit, in my view. But give the responsibility to somebody and say, go and spend that money in the best way. If there's a list of groups or people that we need to give the money to, then we do it on email, but let's not go through the rigour of trying to then prove everything. You know, if I'm in a sleeping bag, sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox in a minute, I'm on a sleeping bag on a seaphone and I need a meal, then let them come here and we'll give them a voucher to go and get a meal. That's what I mean by, they're not going to get any government funding for that, but we need to damn well feed them, and we might need to clothe them, we might need to put them in accommodation. Let's just do that.
Can I just back that up? Can we just treat it as a firefighting budget? What's the better phrase?
That's the word.
So that when you've got an instant problem in front of you that needs to be fixed, we've got some money and we can fix the problem.
Jane can sign a cheque.
Would you be happy to delegate authority to manage that to me, so that I'm not coming to you with
Yes,
somebody needs
absolutely,
£10, somebody
100%.
needs £20, so if I maintain specific records,
If you don't spend it, I'll bring it up in the annual performance review.
So would it be right to call this an emergency funding reserve?
emergency relief fund.
Yeah.
And
And we're agreeing to transfer the funds from the civic and mayoral budget.
If
If
it's not
it
spent.
becomes available, we will add that to the emergency fund.
And then the other spend,
Okay.
two parts.
So what we're agreeing then is that we allocate the remainder of the grants fund to an emergency relief fund which Jane is authorised to spend
Yep.
on our behalf on the sorts of things that we've talked about,
And will be reported
and will be
back.
reported back, but she doesn't have to come to us for permission first. That's the assumption. It's not in the notice of motion because it needs to be fairly short. And that if we don't spend the mayoral fund on the event this year, it goes into that pot.
Yes.
I don't like your wording, I don't know what...
Sure, I know, this is the better word.
Not Jane, the town clerk, because she might become ill herself and somebody else takes over the role temporarily, you know,
I
not
haven't
personally.
got time to get ill.
Sunshine.
The Grim Reaper's going to have to come to me another day, far too busy. But no, I take your point, town clerk.
Yes.
There was a long line of succession.
First opening question, there was something that came out of Dorset Council, that their senior leadership team have actually separated themselves.
Yes, they have.
So they're operating as two separate teams, one of which is at home and the other of which is in the office. Are you and...
We're all at home, apart from now.
Okay.
So unless they live together.
It's like the vice president and the president can't go in the same plane.
Well, that's exactly...
Matt and I never travel on the same train together.
It's a fair point, isn't it?
Yeah, all staff are set up to work from home and have been since day one, and all staff are working from home wherever operationally possible. Tara is based in a separate office anyway, but is currently working from home. Matt's working from home, I'm working from home, and Ian's on leave,
Okay, that seems to fix up.
but working from home. But it is something that we discussed in the office, and we discussed as a wider team, and have built in some of those contingencies should a number of us be unavailable.
There's chances of that happening.
Good.
Voting on that.
Shall we need to vote on what's been suggested?
Yeah, we do.
Well, propose it.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Everyone in favour? Good, excellent. Jane, I was wondering whether we could go on to the confidential bit next, so that our colleagues can go if they wish to, and then have that discussion about the...
Of course. We're happy to stay because we've got a few bits to do, possibly anyway, at the end.
What, within that discussion?
No,
You two want to stay?
we're happy to stay, I
Happy
think.
to
Yeah.
stay. Happy to stay.
Still waiting, aren't we?
Downstairs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can wait downstairs.
Oh, I
and
see.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
just-
I mean, I won't worry about that because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're happy to
Sorry,
stay.
to be a little bit cryptic.
That's all right. Does the confidential papers go out on streaming?
No.
Streaming,
So
okay.
when we get to the confidential item, our colleague in the corner, Peter, who live stream everything with us, will turn everything off and leave the room,
Okay.
but come back and pack up later.
When are we going to take, before we get to the confidential bit, questions about other things like the forward plan? I've got a question about the finance forward plan.
So that will come on item 12,
Right, okay.
part of the
So
information.
we will do item 11. So item 11 is really just for a discussion at this point in time, and it was to try and ensure that the ideas that we have to grapple with, despite our present emergency, are being looked at and thought about in the times ahead. However we do that. We're going to have a whole series of activities that come out of the working groups. And we'll also have activities that come out from individuals, because if you take our strategic plan, our corporate plan, then there are items there that haven't been looked at by a working group. So there'll be all sorts of ideas that are looking for having some funding for next year that haven't normally been part of our budgeting. So we need to have a mechanism in which we can make those decisions once we know what sort of funding we might have available to us to allocate. I sent around to members of the committee those ideas that have been coming out of the Clean and Green Committee as an example of the sort of information we're going to have in front of us. I just wanted a quick discussion as to whether, first of all, the timeline that would actually follow, which is probably gone now, but there was a planned timeline where we would get a flavour for people's priorities at the April the 8th Town Council meeting, and then at our next meeting in April, end of April, we would make some, bringing things together, make some recommendations to the full council in May, because we'll have a clear idea in April the 29th meeting of the sort of funding we'll have available. It won't be the exact final amount, but it will be close. But it's whether we're happy as a Finance and Governance Committee to allocate funding on those sorts of broad headings that I put in the paper I circulated, or whether we want some very specific points at this stage coming forward, so we're voting on a very specific item at a very specific cost. That's the framework for the discussion.
Well, I feel it should be the latter. I think we want quite firm and detailed proposals if we're going to allocate budget. So having a very fluffy £50,000, if you allocate that and then the project costs 70, you've got to find another 20 from somewhere. And similarly, that might block other projects that we might want to do. My sort of feeling, a slightly different approach, is we sort of, maybe we define we're going to have 2 rounds of funding. We'll have a meeting in July, and we'll have a meeting in December. We need everyone to bring their group, their ideas to that one meeting, where we can actually look at them all at the same time and balance up the priorities. Because if we have ideas coming at different times, we might allocate budget and then later on go, well, that's a better idea. So I feel we should sort of, as a strategy, set 1 or 2 meetings a year where this committee will allocate budget to projects, and we need detailed project proposals to come to those meetings so we can weigh up them all. We get them all in front of us and weigh up what's what.
So how close are we to having the plan and the clear identification of our priorities?
Well, the discussion that we would have on the issues that are coming out of the working groups would actually create that plan. So in other words, when we decide that we want to spend 50,000 on this or 40,000 on that, that's because they are the priorities that this council has identified.
So shouldn't the plan be done first?
Well, we've got a strategy there already, but we've now got to, we've got things that we want to do that came out of that Saturday meeting, but clearly we could spend £1 million quite happily on the things that we want to do. So somewhere along the line, those things have got to be prioritised.
Because the worry I have is, we as individuals have all got our own things we'd really like to see happen. But corporately, we need to agree the plan, we need to agree the priorities, we need to see that in greater detail, and that should then drive the decisions.
That's where I would disagree with Luke's idea, because I think if we say we want to put 50,000 towards, and if we take the paper I sent round towards the country park, then that's a priority which people vote on, and then that's the amount of money that they have, rather than getting somebody to go out and find out to replace kilometres of pathway and make them up to speed is going to cost £25,000 or whatever, and getting all that information and then for that to be voted down as a non-priority. So it's trying to get the priorities sorted before we allocate the specific sums to specific activities within that priority. David?
So, when you first explained this to me, we talked about we're going to reach an end of year point, and at that point we'll understand what we haven't spent. We know what we've allocated in the existing budgets for the planned work, and at some point or other as a council we need to come together, having set our strategy, and start to decide how we might spend some of this money. So I worked with John Orrell to produce a similar outline of budget for the Tumbledown Farm project, and I think having an outline budget for the Tumbledown Farm, for the green and clean, for the teeth, for the whatever, helps us understand whether we have enough, not enough, or too much monies that we need to decide what to do with, because we need then, when we actually commit to spend, to still go through a process of approval. So this is about a budgeting process, it's not a commitment to spend. So we're trying to allocate against our strategy. I agree with David on that, and I support it on that basis. We're trying to have a discussion ahead of detailed commitments.
David.
I'm going to disagree with my colleague and agree with Councillor Wakely. I think in my head where it sits is we have a strategy which is pretty much finished. There's a little few, might be a few wordsmith and a bit of tweak. So the funding issue, for me, there was two things for me. The funding items, what we bring forward, have to fit into the strategy. Otherwise, there is no point in having a strategy. So my view is that the committee members, the committee chairman of the committees, because we've set up a committee system with a chairman, they have the responsibility to bring forward the proposals that support the strategy and the detailed funding of those. They have to demonstrate for me, otherwise I'm not going to vote for them, that it supports the strategy, which we've already agreed. So I agree broadly with Luke. What I would say though is that for me, the chairman of those committees have to bring those forward, but they also have to prioritise their own actions. So when the Green and Clean come forward, I'd like to see all their proposals, and I'd like to see them costed, and I'd like to see them in the order that they think they're prioritised. So that I can go 1 to 10, and then I can do the Teeth Committee, 1 to 10, and make decisions, and that's all got to be done on the same night in my view.
Yeah.
So they have to be rapid and slick really in terms, because that's going to be a long meeting. And then we make a decision based on the value it brings to the town, the value it supports the strategy, and whether we can, what money we've got available. Otherwise, we're trying to, if it doesn't support the strategy, we've wasted months. Yeah. So,
Totally agree with that, David, in terms of it's got to agree to the strategy, it's got to support the strategy. But it's getting the detail. So, my priority for the Green and Clean, just using that as an example, might be to spend £40,000 on footpaths.
yeah.
I can't tell you, without doing a lot of detailed work, whether that 40,000 will give you a kilometre of footpaths, 2 kilometres of footpaths, a bridge that's needed to connect 2 footpaths, unless I do a fantastic amount of work,
Right.
which may not be
Got it.
necessary.
So my view on that would be that if that is number 1 on your list, then you've estimated that cost. We don't have to do all the footpaths in year 1,
No.
but it's in our strategy. So therefore we commit what funds we can.
Yeah.
If you run out of money,
Yeah,
then
run out of money.
it'll, a bit like the grant thing, it'll have to run over into the next year. So that's the way we try and stretch
Yeah.
the money we have available versus the priorities that the committees. I just feel that we need to, the committees basically need to get their act together, and they need to understand that if they want the money, they're going to have to put the work in. And I'm a bit frustrated that they're not coming forward with accepting the Green and Clean.
And Dave's just done this today.
Yes.
Well, I did it some while back, but it's just John Orwell is somewhat busy at the moment.
So Vice Chairman should step in.
And I have.
Yeah.
So I'll circulate it to the members of the group, because John's now agreed that's okay. So you'll see something as an outline.
Lucy.
Yeah, I've got a step forward, and I know many of you are disappointed that Neighbourhood Planning Group hasn't met more often. And the time we did, we changed the date because one of us couldn't attend, and then that was the only person that could attend. So the road to hell is littered with good intentions. To do with the Neighbourhood Planning Group, we know that the government has not yet released the funding that will be available, and we have yet to investigate associated costs. and very happy for the next meeting, which we could call very shortly online, for volunteers to step forward and investigate costings, because we still have to make the decision about whether we want to go forward with this as a council. So it's all chicken and egg. I'm not sure how much officer time there would be to go into researching these costs, or whether it's something members should undertake. It's a complex area. So I'm not clear. I'm not clear how we can possibly line all of our chickens up at the start and judge them. I think we have to make some decisions in principle. I started out not thinking that neighbourhood planning was a good idea. I now think it's got benefits, it's got opportunities, it's a positive approach, it's a chance to engage with the town, and all kinds of stuff. But I haven't put a price on any of that yet, and I don't have any time to do that, so I'm happy for someone else to take over the chairing of that group. But again, I've got the question, do officers have time to help researching those costs, or is it something members should do in their spare time?
Thank you, Lucy. Before you answer that question, Jane, had we been in normal circumstances, would that be something that officers would have been able to help with? I'm not assuming they can easily now because of the circumstances we're in, but if we were in normal circumstances, because I think Lucy's right to ask that question, that there needs to be some support for some aspects of our research.
Mine's gone the same way as yours. Councillor Legg decided it's not going to...
Oh no, there we go. It's a very difficult question to answer. It's a bit like how long is a piece of string? How long is this bit of research going to take? It depends what the research is, how in-depth you want it. I know we've done some initial ballpark costings for a neighbourhood plan with other town councils our size who are going through it at the moment, and things like that we can cope with. But bigger pieces of work, we'd have to assess each one on its own merits, with its own time predictions, in alignment with everything else that's happening, particularly at the moment when we're not even sure what that everything else that is happening is. So I'm very sorry that I can't be more definite.
You want to come back in?
I was just picking up on what you said, David, actually. I mean, you suggested that there was a £40,000 for footpaths. We don't know how much path that is, but that's information we need to know to make a decision. If you go, we can do 1 kilometre footpath for 40 grand, and then I'm weighing it up against another project for 40 grand that may have a much larger benefit. But if it turns out to be 5 kilometres of footpath with that money, then I would weigh it up differently against a different project. So to me, there does need to be a level of detail to make that call, because I have to assess whether I think that is good value or the best value for money for that particular slice of the pie. There's only so much to go round. So I'm still inclining to more information before I make a decision.
And that's where officer time is.
Yeah. And that will be very difficult because not all footpaths are built the same. And
No.
a footpath in one area might be a lot easier to achieve
One
than a
man's
footpath in a very damp area that needs a lot more upkeep or stiles or fencing. Or
No stars anymore, even footbridge.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I could come in as well. I mean, I keep forgetting what's happening out there. I keep forgetting. It's lovely being here with you all because it's normality again. I've still got no idea what's going on, but it's normality. What is happening out there is going to have a huge impact on our town. We know that now. So I think we've got huge decisions to make. This blows out of the water. Any post-it notes we might have written in September. And I don't know how we can usefully spend our time. We know we've got responsibilities towards assets and open spaces. We've first of all got responsibilities to the team of officers and staff that work for the council. What's going to happen to small businesses out there? We can't even begin to guess at. Well, I could go on. You know that ball of wool is unravelling in all sorts of directions. What schools are being asked to do is simply incredible. I wonder if with Dorset Council's multi-agency management meeting and process thing is going anywhere, and how we as a council can plug into that, because I know they have emergency planning responsibilities. I'm not offering answers here. I just think our strategy must change.
David? No, David.
Yes. I'd just like to go back to Lucy's point, specifically the funding and also how neighbourhood, because I feel Lucy's pain because I'm on that committee and it's been really difficult. And I'm sort of opposite to Lucy. I started off very sceptical about neighbourhood planning, started to get warmed up by my other colleagues, and now with the current situation, given what's gone into the Dorset local plan, I'm sort of thinking, I can't find another example of a council our size that is new, that is developing a strategy that takes on the responsibility of developing a neighbourhood plan in the next 2 to 3 years ahead of the Trump factor, which is not Donald Trump, but the trumping factor of the local plan. I think it's a huge, and now we've got the corona stuff on top. I sort of agree with Lucy. I think, in my head, we should park the neighbourhood plan because it's going to cost 25 grand just to get it off the ground. 23,000, I think, the last I looked. The government are not in any position to allocate money to neighbourhood planning. They're just not. And I think it's one of the things that's got to be part, in my view, I don't know where we make this decision, but neighbourhood planning has got to be parked, I think, for 12 months and come back again in 12 months' time. I can feel my colleagues disagreeing with me already, but I just think I've got more important things to do.
I might suggest we just park this conversation, because we're trying to look at a crystal ball and we have no idea what's going to happen, and Lucy's absolutely right, the next few months will be absolute mayhem. So, and if we could come back, say in July or August, and have some sort of a basic project scoping exercise, so anybody who's got an idea has to do a basic scoping document for their project, which would include, the aims, objectives, outline budgets, and that can be used for decision making. If we're in a position to actually make any decisions.
I accept that point about making decisions. I would be very nervous if we expected individual colleagues to have to do those sorts of things, because somebody may have a brilliant idea but not the skills to do what you just asked them to.
Well, we can help with that. If somebody knows how to do project scoping documentation, or the person who's got the idea is not good, is get together with them and
We could do a template.
it's really not difficult.
Howard, you've been very quiet.
And will remain such.
Good. Jane?
The senior management team at the councils has had numerous conversations about the need to properly scope out a project management process and consider the need for a project management, not office, but maybe a smaller team. We have resisted taking that forward because we're already implementing some changes within the staff team, some quite significant changes within the senior staff team. And we also wanted to see how aspirational members' thoughts were as to whether we would need that or whether we can handle it in the existing staff team. So we very much as a staff team are led by you and your ambition for the council, but it could be something we could consider, not only having project management processes in place, but where and how that support comes from.
Just to make a comment, there is a whole issue. You only need just enough project management. You only need what we need. So it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be difficult, it could be really, really, really straightforward.
Yeah. If we had a suite of documentation to support members in your own project planning management,
Really basic
that's
stuff.
something
It needs to go to the
probably
chairman of the committees, and that's the template we use that to present, job done.
I say it will be quite easy to produce because there's a lot of best practice out there. We don't have to start from scratch, but workloads are very much up in the air at the moment until we find out particularly what the next few weeks and months are going to bring us.
I actually, when I left the fire service, I actually thought there'd be a whole lot of documentation.
You could just take the fire service logo off.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So if I dig it out and send it to you?
Yeah, I'm sure I will have time in the coming weeks to have a look at it. And both myself and Matt are trained and experienced project managers. I know we've got with Kev and Charmaine and Rosie within the office, we've got a lot of project management experience that we can put to getting a suitable framework that members can use to take aspects of the work forward, with support from officers, of course.
David, I'm sure you want to come back in before we go.
I think project management, there are lots of templates and lots of guidelines. I think it's deciding what you want to do is what's important to getting it agreed as a group. And we've yet to make some of those steps in some of the groups. And we've certainly had some disagreements. So getting it down, getting it written, follow up that idea that there are other things that are going to occupy our time in the next few months. So a review in July of proposals, no matter how well or poorly formed, we can still make a judgment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Jane, what are the thoughts that we would have a town council meeting sometime in some way?
Can I have one insight to nature instead, please? We're waiting to see the full contents of the coronavirus bill that is going through government at the moment. We fully expect there to be some significant changes in the law. I've been lobbying now because I've been lobbying the government because there are a number of legal requirements upon the town council that are quite time-bound that we need to be altered. Also, we're asking the government to allow town and parish councils to meet remotely, because at the moment the decision-making process has to be face-to-face. There is no decision-making process permitted virtually. Should that come in, it makes it a lot easier. However, I have a huge number of reservations about trying to attempt to get 29 councillors, 4 or 5 officers on a video call and quite how we make that work. So whilst I don't envisage a face-to-face full council meeting in the future, we are exploring what changes in the law will bring and what technology we can use. It's going to be difficult to meet remotely, but it is not going to be possible for us to meet as a full-term council.
It'll be 28 because the election's been cancelled.
Has it?
Just announced. So I don't know whether we call it or it just stays vacant.
Isn't that tomorrow?
Yes.
It is tomorrow.
They just tweeted and cancelled it.
What?
If it's going ahead, yes.
But I need more councillors in that.
What are we going to do? We've only got 2 now.
In the light of the discussion we just had, and to move the meeting on, can I suggest that this committee, as it stands at the moment, is recommending that the process that we are considering should be delayed by at least 3 months in the light of the present circumstances.
Yeah.
Is that happy with them?
Yeah.
So I'm proposing that.
Yeah.
David seconding it. All those in favour?
And I voted.
Yeah, well done. Okay, good. The useful discussion, but
July.
we can't do anything quickly anyway, so we can reflect. Okay, so we're going over to confidential matters now, so if we could... Oh, information items. Sorry, there's information items first.
So the information items are as they are in front of you. Actions from the last meeting and the forward plans. And I understand there are questions on the forward plan, Chairman.
Yes, David, you had a question?
Yes, because I had some time to read stuff the last few weeks. One of the things I briefly mentioned to Ian, but didn't sort of go anywhere, is I'm quite keen within the finance papers, and it really is a suggestion at this stage, but I'd quite like to see some sort of income monitoring year on year, and it doesn't, well, we do have it in the P&L, but I can't compare that to last year. So how much money, I think in one of the papers it said 800,000 we took in like the year before. So I'd like to see us making some comparisons year on year of income, renting, so that, you know what I mean, success factor of the next 5 years is our income needs to go up if we're to uphold. So whatever it is within the framework for P&L, I know that there's other things going on and it's not urgent, but can we have a conversation, or can our conversation be in at some point and say, can we have a sort of income monitoring document which is year on year?
Probably a very good one for the budget monitoring group to speak to
Okay.
about. And if I may just, while we're on the subject of income, that we are anticipating, because of the current situation, quite a significant impact on council's income for this year. It is something we will keep you all informed and up to date with, but that may have an impact on the amount of additional funds you may or may not have been expecting to have after the year end.
What areas is that in council tax particularly? Or?
No. So council tax, one of the fortunate benefits of being a parish or a town council is you are guaranteed
we get the
3
full amount,
cents.
yes.
We will get the full amount.
Excellent.
Where we are expecting some significant impacts are on beach, on deck chair hire, windbreaker hire, which does bring in a fair amount, and the council will probably be asked in the future to consider what level of support it gives to its tenants with regard to a significant downturn in our tenants' incomes in the future.
Yeah, we don't make much money out of deck chairs, that's for sure.
We don't. Not profit-wise anyway, believe me. Okay.
But in particular, it will be that business side.
It will be.
Okay, any other questions on points of information? Actions from the last meeting, or any of those other aspects? And our forward plan, anything? Forward plan is again going to have to be very much a moving feast, I suspect.
So I think where we'll probably find ourselves, Chairman, is some of the less urgent items will be put on the back burner, as it were, for a later date, and with a reduction in the number of meetings that I'm anticipating, to take only urgent items, because it may well be quite a long process to do all of that virtually.
David?
Could I make a suggestion that we might be considering a scheme of delegation? So you might decide that certain decisions can be made by an officer, certain decisions can be made by an officer working with the chair or vice chair of the relevant committee, or certain levels of decisions need to go out to the committee for formal committee agreement, rather than having formal meetings. And it's subject to your first condition, but that scheme of delegation I think we need in place to see us through 3 months of trouble.
So I do have a draft scheme of delegation ready to go. I'm just waiting on the coronavirus bill to be passed, so that I know how I can best put that in front of full council. As you will be aware, financial regulations do give me full financial delegated responsibility in an emergency, which arguably we do find ourselves in, but it's that more decision-making capability that I'd be seeking to strengthen within the council at this time. We shouldn't have removed that little clause from before we had councillors, that would have sufficed. However, it's probably timely for when the coronavirus bill is passed that we look at how I can bring an enhanced scheme, a temporary scheme of delegation in front of you.
Is there anyone here who remembers the Corona lemonade box?
Yeah. Get your money back.
Keep thinking of talking about that.
I think the scheme of delegation could work well for the planning bit as well, because those agendas are far too long. Kind of scheme of delegation. Some of them probably might not need to come. You know, the chairman could do it. Might not need to come.
Lucy.
Thank you. I hear this from many members. I agree with all of them. I've been in discussion with the town clerk today on how to rationalise the agenda, and it would need doing even if we could continue to meet in public. And so I'm going to suggest, in fact, well, Councillor Brooks suggested that we get ideas about applications where there's no comments from residents, from ward councillors, from members of the committee, and possibly agree on block whether we have comments on those. We know from past experience that the vast majority of such applications are technical matters, but I will propose exceptions. I would expect to come to council meetings where there's significant developments, meetings which are outside the defined development boundary, and applications where there are requests to discuss it from residents and from members of the council, and with the aim to be making more effective use of members' time and officers' time. So we would look to reduce those to monthly meetings.
Reduced. Okay, so no others on the ordinary agenda. We are now moving to confidential. Thank you very much.
You just have to do